And when the unionists start to spout nonsense about how they're looking out for the middle class or they're the ones who are concerned about the American worker, nonsense. They only care about themselves and their mission, which is to fill their own pockets. They are a cancerous special interest. Just imagine if the Republicans had some special interest that they just kept, that they were so ingrained with that they were virtually part of the Republican Party, that just kept milking taxpayers year after year after year after year in a systematic scam. That's all the unions are. They're a cancerous special interest. And they have managed to entwine themselves onto a host body, the Democrat Party. And from that perch, they've been sucking the taxpayers dry for decades. We need to make this clear. They're just a special interest that has found a host body. And now they're threatening to kill the host. Really. The great thing about this war that we're in with the unions right now is that it could set the Democrat Party back decades as well if we actually win this war. Because the party has thrown all in with the unions. They are so beholden to the special interest, they are willing to ruin their party over it. And all evidence is that we're winning this war right now. Here in Wisconsin, it's going to be a tough fight to keep Scott Walker in office, but we can do it. And if we do, the public sector unions here are seriously crippled over time. In Indiana, the governor there just signed right-to-work legislation. And he pulled collective bargaining privileges from them about 5 years ago. The right-to-work legislation that was just signed in Indiana has at least 12 Democrats in their assembly, and they call it the House, saying we're not even going to run for re-election again. There are Democrats in Indiana that are so discouraged Indiana is becoming such a red state they're not going to run for re-election again. Huzzah, huzzah. Great. And we see all sorts of evidence that other lawmakers at all levels of government are fighting back against the big labor unions as well, for the good of government, the taxpayer, and for the good of the people and the economy. And it's not just traditionally Republican states either. This is where you know the ball is really rolling now. It isn't just traditionally Republican states. We learned today that Republicans in Minnesota are going to push to make that a right-to-work state. Minnesota has a Democrat governor who could just veto any bill that came past his desk. So instead, the Republicans want to go the constitutional amendment route. But this is Minnesota. We're talking about union busting in Wisconsin and Michigan and Minnesota. The unions are right to think that they're on their last legs. This constitutional amendment would allow Minnesotans to vote in November on a constitutional referendum, an amendment referendum, giving employees the freedom to choose whether or not they want to join a union. The Republicans control the House and the Senate, and they used this tactic last year when they put together another constitutional amendment on the ballot that defined marriage as a union between a man and a woman. So Republicans control the legislature in Minnesota as well. They just don't control the governor's office. So they're going to go the amendment route. Republicans in control say there's a lot of enthusiasm and unity among House Republicans for the bill, especially following Indiana's recent right-to-work victory. Yet political operatives seem to think that the bill could run into trouble in the Senate, where some Republican lawmakers there have accepted campaign contributions from unions. So some of the unions own Republicans in Minnesota. Nonetheless, this is rumblings. It's the beginning of rumblings. It's an attempt, even in Minnesota, to take on and bust the unions. And for the good of the economy and for the good of the American worker. I mean, just imagine. Unions were once needed. They were once necessary for the good of the American worker. Now they've simply outlived their usefulness. They've become too bloated and corrupt to really represent the American worker fairly anymore or necessarily anymore. We don't need unions anymore. We have so many state, federal, and local labor laws. We have all the protections we need in the workplace. And this acknowledgement is now occurring that the less unionization we have, the better. It's catching on like wildfire. Arthur Laffer, that great economist, has a piece in the Wall Street Journal today. The states are leading a pro-growth rebellion, he says. After the 2008 election, Democrats controlled both houses of Congress and, of course, the presidency, he says. They used that victory to push through an agenda as radical as any this country has seen since FDR. Unprecedented deficit finance stimulus spending, more regulations, a new health care entitlement, etc. In 2010, the Democrats lost control of the House of Representatives and 7 Senate seats in a startling reversal of fortune. But instead of rethinking their agenda, Democrats in Washington have doubled down, marching in lockstep toward even bigger government. Laffer says, well, the states are now starting to challenge and change the playing field. The latest shock to the Democratic agenda is Indiana's adoption of a right-to-work law. And there are many more changes on the state level to follow. Most high school civics students would agree that no American worker should either be prohibited from joining a union or required to join one as a condition of employment. And no union member, or anyone else for that matter, should be required to contribute to political causes they oppose. Yet in 27 states, if more than 50% of workers agree to create a union shop, workers are still required to join the union and pay dues even if those dues are used for political causes they disapprove of. As of February 1st, that's no longer the case in the Hoosier state. That's progress, part of a growing trend at the state level. Indiana is now the 23rd state to adopt a right-to-work law. But just because it was the right thing to do, don't think it was easy for Governor Daniels to do it. Not only did every Democrat in Indiana's House and Senate vote against the bill, but 5 Republicans in the House and 9 in the Senate also voted against it, a testament to the influence of union power in Washington and state capitals across America. Passing the right-to-work legislation isn't Governor Daniels' first success in Indiana. On his first day in office in 2005, he removed former Democratic Governor Evan Bayh's executive order allowing collective bargaining for state employees. As a result, over the next 6 years, the number of Indiana state employees paying union dues fell to fewer than 1,500 from more than 16,000. Let's ponder that. In Indiana, when collective bargaining was ended for state workers, virtually all of them stopped paying union dues. And Indiana only had 16,000 state employees in the union. But Scott Walker's Act 10 fixes will affect about 300,000 state workers and teachers, about 300,000 state and municipal workers and teachers. So in Indiana, dues-paying members virtually vanished within 5 years. What do you expect to happen in Wisconsin? See, this is why Walker's reelection is so critical, and it's also why the Republican majority in the Assembly is so critical. I've been saying, we're not turning this back. Short term, the Assembly has the votes to block any return to collective bargaining that might come up, and long term, there won't be any voter support for it. Trust me, 20 years from now, voters won't be clamoring to allow public employees to collectively bargain again. It's over. Indiana's a great example of this. Within 5 years, virtually no state employees even want to be in the union anymore. And there is no one in Indiana clamoring to give them back their collective bargaining rights. So within 5 years in Wisconsin, will we be able to say the same? Nearly 300,000 employees will have stopped paying union dues altogether? I mean, can you see how crippling this is to AFSCME and WEAC and the rest of them? See why they are so panicky and alarmed. They believe that what Scott Walker has done is an existential threat to them. And they're right. Anyway, Arthur Laffer concludes the benefits to states having right-to-work legislation are overwhelming, as demonstrated by a number of economists. The economies in states with right-to-work laws grow significantly faster than those in forced union states. I'm going to stop again just to reinforce it. I feel the need to say these things on occasion. This is another one of those things that is just clear. It's just true. Enough studies have been done now that it's just true. You have a bunch of union types trying to claim that right-to-work states are going backward and et cetera. The economies in right-to-work states are growing faster than those in forced union states. Not even up for debate. They also have a higher employment growth, attract more residents, and have more rapid growth in state and local tax revenues than forced union states. There again, why would that be? You have more people working. You have more productivity. You have more people pulling paychecks. Therefore, you can tax those paychecks, and you have more going into the state and local tax coffers. Productivity raises tax money. But Laffer says right-to-work laws are only one example of states taking on the Democratic agenda in public sector unions. Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri are all preparing legislation to eliminate their state's progressive personal income tax codes. Last year, Ohio repealed its estate tax. And the issues in Wisconsin surrounding Governor Walker's battle with state workers over budget constraints and collective bargaining are legend. Governor Walker's not alone. Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam has signed legislation ending public school teachers' collective bargaining rights there. And New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has removed collective bargaining rights on issues such as state employee contributions to pension and health care plans. Meanwhile, Democrats, for better or worse, have staked their fortune on tight partnerships with the unions. Unfortunately for them, not only is union membership a fraction of what it once was, but half of all union members today are public sector employees, teachers, nurses, police officers, firemen, prison guards. Not only is union membership declining, but in some of the most ardent pro-union states, such as California, the unfunded liabilities of public employee retirement plans are pushing those states toward financial collapse and intolerably high tax rates. The message from the states is that allying oneself too closely with the unions is a losing strategy. President Obama and his Democratic allies should take note. They've hitched their fortunes to a falling star. That's the great Arthur Laffer, and he's right. Yeah, we're on the conservative side of the aisle. We're winning this war. And re-electing Walker and these 3 state senators under recall might be the last big hurdle that we need to clear in Wisconsin before we get some breathing room. We really have the ball rolling now. And with union losses in Wisconsin and in a few other states, we'll have the ball rolling downhill on them, and they won't be able to recover.